Hello again and welcome back to the second part of the lecture. So, like I was just talking about in the last lecture there, we had a look at what the different stances are within the ontological and the epistemological standpoints. So what the different standpoints are ontologically and epistemologically. And then I finished off by just briefly noting that we have sociological paradigms and that we have sociological theories, okay, and ideas and groups and of concepts, okay. So I want to sort of bring it down again. So as you can see, I'm sort of trying to work from the top and work down and down and down. So in this part of the lecture, I'm just going to look at those key theories that are actually going to be used to frame this module and to frame your thoughts around youth work in particular, okay? So there are those theories, those paradigms that were used, that were noted at the beginning of this module in order to provide you with a variety of lenses in order to look at youth work through, okay? So this section of the lecture is going to explain the key sociological theories framing this module. So exactly what I just said. So sociological paradigms. So like I said, so ideas, to put it very blatantly, I suppose simply, are the concepts or the thought patterns which I explained there in the last lecture. So these help us to look at, questions such as how do we think about our practice. So as we've already said, so that's what sociology does. Sociology helps us frame things and look at things and helps us name what's there, but gives us a way of labeling it in order for us to be able to articulate it and explain it. So we do certain things in youth work. We work with young people in certain ways. We interact with people in certain ways, as we do in life in general. But how do we understand this better, and how do we articulate this better? Well, sociology gives us a way of doing that and gives us labels to contend with, to understand, and then to also maybe recreate labels as life evolves and as society evolves, okay? So like it says there in the second point, thought patterns, concepts, they help us to think of, ways that we can make sense of it all. So in particular, how can we make sense of youth work? And we can do that through the use of sociological theories and paradigms, such as those that I noted at the beginning, which were functionalism, conflict theory. Again, you may be aware of some of these or all of them from your own studies previously. So symbolic interactionism, feminist theory, radical humanist paradigm, and critical social theory, okay? So I'm going to go through these briefly and hope that you might look at these in a little bit more detail then through the different readings and the summaries that I've given you already in the handouts that I've attached this week to this module, okay? So so we'll have a look at these and see how they can help us make a bit more sense of life, of society, and in particular youth work, okay? So just to say that these paradigms and these theories look at society as a whole and also in parts. So hopefully you might be aware that these two words, these two definitions, so macro, micro. So you might have heard that we have, macro theories and micro theories about the world, okay? So just to explain, as I said, I'm really trying to break these down into all the different concepts that we're going to be looking at, okay? And how we use those concepts, how we use those theories. So if we're talking about a macro theory, what's a macro theory? Okay, so a macro means that you are looking at large-scale social systems and populations and large-scale processes, okay? So we're looking at a country or the world or a big group or a big community, okay? We're looking at macro. Micro looks at small groups and unities within a larger system. So we know that, we have the world and the society. What are particular groups that we can look at within that society, okay? So I hope that makes a bit of sense in regard to the definitions of macro and micro when we're talking about different definitions, okay? So functionalism, this would be predominantly seen as a macro way of looking at things. So functionalism looks at the interdependency within society, okay? So how are things linked? How do we link things? So you might remember the last YouTube clip that I had last week, which was Sam Richards talking about sociology, and he talked about that link that we have, that you might be sitting contemplating some particular aspect of your life within your life that's happening within your life, but the fact is that other people have thought about this, other people have contemplated this, and that we're all linked, okay? So what's functionalism looks at the link between all social groups, big and small. When a change occurs to one, it affects others as a consequence, okay? An example of this would be austerity in Ireland, or austerity in other, as we know, there's been austerity right through Europe, austerity in Ireland, Britain, and of course in particular Greece as well, we know, and there's been particular measures taken during the period of austerity in these different countries, in different European countries, okay, which led to cuts in funding for youth work, and therefore, as a result of these cuts which happened through austerity, youth work was affected, and therefore services for young people and how we did youth work, in particular, then how that was affected. So youth work was affected by something happening at a large scale, in a large scale level, okay? So conflict theory, okay, this would be macro, okay? Conflict theory looks at the inequalities in society, okay? So what are some of the things that have been happening in society, and what effects might this have in working against society as a whole? So conflict theory looks at there being basically what it says, exactly what it says, conflict, so that it looks at the fact that there has to be certain things happening, certain conflicts within certain area of society. It looks at the redistribution of resources predominantly, and how resources, power is distributed in an unequal manner amongst groups, and this causes the inequalities in society. So this is what it highlights, okay? So conflict theory would be closely associated with the likes of Karl Marx, and if people know even a bit about Karl Marx, key ideas within Karl Marx looking at society was around capitalism and the distribution of resources within the world, and how societies were unequal, and how inequalities existed amongst people and societies, and his ideas on, how do we make society more equal, how do we redistribute power and resources in order to make society more equal, okay? So hopefully that gives you a little bit more of an idea of what conflict theory looks at. So if we're using a conflict theory to look at, if we're using it as a sociological lens, as a theory to look at society, we're looking at, okay, well, why are some people more fortunate than others? What are the sort of influences on one group in society that gives them the power, that gives them the advantage against another society? An example would be some very wealthy people using their money and status to persuade the government into creating policies which are beneficial to them, okay? So conflict theory would be a way of us looking at, okay, well, this group in society have a lot of money, they have a lot of resources at hand to them, and therefore they can try and construct and influence society in a certain way because of this that will be suitable for them. So it's a way of looking at groups, of looking at society, and why certain people have certain things and certain groups have certain things while others don't, okay? So government are still, so this is an example in that government are still responsible for giving legal status to travellers in Ireland, and why has that not happened? So who is influencing that? And is there can we look at it from a perspective of conflict theory, okay? Who has the power to influence government around things like changes in travellers? And as we know, in Ireland, travellers still don't have, still aren't legally recognised in society, okay? So symbolic interactionism. So this would be a micro way of looking at things. So I mentioned already Max Weber as well earlier on. So this looks at how people interact with each other, okay? So this is looking at, like what sort of interactions are going on with people, within people, society. People is reality is created by interacting with each other, which is not predetermined, so it happens within people, so it evolves, okay? So this is a way of looking at, we create those realities, okay? They're not created for us, outside of us. We create it. And so symbolic interactionism as a theory helps us look at, how people develop, how things are developed within society as society moves on, as society progresses. So I'd urge you to think about this in regard to a youth work context, okay? How do we create information within a youth work context? How do we create experiences? We do it with the young people that we work with. We do it every day, okay? So symbolic interactionism would be a really key theory in looking at how we actually practice youth work, okay? So just note that to yourself. An example is that we as a group see a particular group of people as maybe problematic or troublesome. So asylum seekers, for example, that becomes our reality. We create that, okay? We create that with ideas that we perpetuate amongst ourselves, okay? And we then see them as a negative presence possibly in society, okay? Due to the ideas that we are perpetuating within ourselves, within our discussions, our conversations, our actions with each other, okay? Feminist theory. This can be macro and micro, and I'm just going to try and move on quickly here. This looks at inequality amongst the sexes, men's dominance in institutions such as work and education, women's ability to overcome discrimination, okay? And an example of feminist theory would be the pay discrimination in Ireland. In Ireland, women, so just to give you an Irish example, and I know I'm giving Irish examples, and obviously my own context is Irish. So in Ireland, women working as civil servants, public servants, or in banks had to give up their job. There was a marriage bar until July 1973. This was due to the belief that married women were seen as taking up a job that a man could have, and women were seen to take the role of the homemaker when they got married, okay? So, feminist theory would look at society and from, this lens that women were held back because of basically being women. So particular structures in society were put in place based on their sex or gender, as it were. Okay, and sorry, just to go back, feminist theory again, more recently, has branched out as well. So we can in that it doesn't just look at women in society. A lot more feminist theory is being used as a way of looking at issues, challenges to things like LGBT in society, transgender, those sort of issues that have arisen more so, I suppose, in recent times as opposed to before. So feminist theory can be used as a lens to look at various challenges that are coming up in society, in contemporary society, and not just women and women's place now, okay? And I'll explain that more so as we go on throughout the next few lectures as well. It'll pop up here and there, okay? So just to finish, the radicalist humanist paradigm, okay? So this looks at humanism and which is this takes humanism and looks at it from sort of a radical point of view. So humanism, to really explain this in the first point here, is a philosophical stance and focuses on values and ethics of people as individuals. So you might be aware of humanism, okay? So this is looking at, people and the values that are underlying within people, focuses on values and ethics of people as individuals and as a collective, and emphasizes the importance of critical thinking and evidence as opposed to that which comes from a particular set of beliefs or a dogma like religion, okay? So what do we carry as humans? What's ingrained in us as humans? And then radicalist, if you make humanism radicalist, it looks at structures and systems of injustice in society, inclusiveness and collaborations, okay? So I'll look at this more